So how do you think it's going then?
Well, I'm telling you now, I'm absolutely pumped, James.
You're absolutely, and that's good to hear.
Yeah, I don't know what it means, but everyone says it these days, don't they, on TikTok videos, how pumped they are. They're either talking about being pumped or that something pops. Either of those words I don't like, I don't subscribe to, but occasionally I've thought about using them.
So
I did use it just then.
If I'm meant to understand correctly, and I'm not on the socials, probably should be, but what you're saying is that you don't like and subscribe.
I don't like and subscribe now.
Right. Good. But we would like anyone listening to this too do both of those things, presumably.
Yep.
That's a good thing.
Our goal is 10 subscribers, isn't it?
That would be a result. And if they could like and subscribe, I think that's the general expectation we'd have of all listeners at this juncture. How's your week been, Ben?
Yeah, I'd say generally okay, apart from the inset session that we had the other evening that was cleverly rebranded as a practice clinic. 55 minutes, I'm not sure I'll ever get back. But how's your week been?
Well, I went to my daughter's parents' evening the other day. Very vaguely relevant to the episode we've got coming up, episode 2. I don't want to ruin it, but just to say that my daughter, one of my daughters, the elder of my two daughters is primary school age, the younger hasn't even reached that milestone yet. So it was a primary school parents' evening. And fundamentally, I didn't understand anything that was going on at all. So,
and how long have you been in the game?
Well, exactly. And I think that brings us on to the topic of today. But before that, of course, we do need to do some sort of formal introduction
yes,
to the show. So welcome to episode 2 of Ben and James Could Do Better, a podcast about education delivered by two men who rarely stick to the lesson plan. I'm James, a special educational needs coordinator, which means I'm like a normal educational needs coordinator, but more special. I'm fairly clear that I'm here, but it's time for me to do a quick attendance check by calling the register.
Thank
Ben?
you. Ad sum. I am present in Latin for those who...
I didn't know.
Yeah.
I could have guessed. Anyway, we have a Ben. We have a Ben. I didn't guess, no. We have a Ben and we have a James, and it remains undeniably true that we could do better. While we do have high expectations of our listeners, we do promise never to set homework. So you don't have to have listened to episode 1 in order to enjoy episode 2. But if you're really committed to achieving the best outcomes, you'll probably still benefit from listening to episode 1 at some point if you haven't already done so. And remember, there is a postcard for you if you put the effort in. This week's postcard is, as last week, from Reading, and it's a picture of the anatomically incorrect lion that stands proudly in Forbury Gardens.
Oh, wonderful.
Before we begin today's lesson, I'd like to do a quick low-stakes retrieval exercise with Ben.
Okay.
Ben, what is the premise of this podcast?
The premise of the podcast is to attract to us, to our stable, to our wheelhouse. That's what they say these days, don't they? To our wheelhouse. Those in the profession who want a bit of light relief, but also anybody, because we've all been to school.
And that's fabulous, and I appreciate your answer. It's not the answer I was looking for.
Oh, isn't it?
No. I was hoping that you would in some point allude to the fact this podcast is about secondary education.
Yes, it is, of course, but I'm taking that as read as we're two sort of wizened old secondary teachers.
Don't take it as read. Our listeners need this spelling out to them. And
what are you saying about them? You're having to spell things out?
I will never be accused of the soft bigotry of low expectations. And I have high expectations of our listeners. But
social mobility.
This podcast is about secondary education. Well, it hasn't been yet, but it will be at some point. And it's not that's not primary education. That's a different thing. Secondary being our USP. Because there's already lots of podcasts about primary education, and they're far more established than us. And from what I could tell, they're pretty popular. But we can't just copy what they do. We don't know anything about primary schools. So I thought it might be good if today's episode, our lesson in inverted commas, was an exploration of the differences between UK primary schools and UK secondary schools. I'm not going to expand beyond the UK because absolutely outside of my comfort zone there.
And there's not going to be any stereotypes, I hope.
I imagine there will be. And it's just, if for no other reason than just to justify the existence of this podcast.
Yes.
Now, as ever, I'm going to need you to pay attention because there will be some cold calling and some checking for understanding. And I've got a jar of lollipop sticks at my disposal, and they've all got your name written on them. In order to fully explain the differences between the two sectors, it wouldn't be enough to rely on my knowledge. I think we've established that. Even if the differences do seem abundantly clear, even to the most ill-informed of laymen, one of our hooks that we established in episode 1 is that every week, or this being week 2, I will turn to some online guidance in order to better understand how things work. Interestingly, though, there's not a lot of source material on the differences between primary schools and secondary schools. I think because people just know what they are. So I really had to dig deep for this. But I did find something, mainly by turning to the websites of supply teaching agencies.
Oh, right. That seems like an unusual sort of...
source for material, yes.
Yeah.
But I went there. Now, it's easy, as an employee of an actual school, to look down on supply staff, because obviously they are generally teachers who can't seem to find a job in a sector in which demand far outstrips supply.
Oh, no, hang on a minute. We've both had to do our fair share of supply lessons.
Yes, I've actually been a supply teacher a number of times myself, so I don't want to alienate supply teachers because they sound like a potential listener base.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think it'd be very unwise of us.
They do a lot of commuting, and they're exactly the kind of people that might listen to this. So I want to be clear, I don't think of agency staff as less worthy than real teachers. But I'm not sure the agencies feel the same way, because I turned to a few websites, and I'd say the information available for their staff is at best patronising, at worst insulting. The agency I'm referring to today is one called Education, and describes itself as the home of happy teachers.
Well, I'm not saying that they're not. I've got no evidence to refute this claim. But...
No, it's a bold claim. I wonder if the reason all of those teachers are happy is because they don't actually have jobs at the moment. They don't work in schools. However, if they are happy, they certainly can't be too bright. We're talking middle ability at best here, and perhaps even low average on the CAT data, because if they do need this information, they don't even know the most basic things about how schools work. But we can't blame the materials available. We have to make the best of them. So it's a 6-point guide on the differences between primary and secondary education. So, point 1, the difference between primary and secondary, as shared by Education on their website.
I've got my pen out again.
Excellent. It's a black pen, yes?
It is, yes.
Do not pick up the red pen yet. That's for corrections. According to the number one difference that we need to know about primary schools, as compared to secondary schools, is that primary schools are generally pitched at younger children, and secondary schools cater for the older child. Now,
is that seriously written on there?
That, in more words than that, but yes, fundamentally, that's the guidance. That's point 1 of 6 points. So that's hence why my reference to they can't think much of their agency staff that they're sending out to schools, because that's something before you even enter the profession, you know, surely.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, there we go. That's point 1. Key difference between primary and secondary: primary for younger children, secondary for older. If you didn't know that before, you know it now. Point 2, and this is entitled Teaching Structure and Specialisation. This guidance here describes the primary teacher as more of a generalist, who has to teach lots of different subjects to the same class, while a secondary teacher is a subject specialist who only teaches one subject but to lots of different groups. That's possibly an oversimplification, but again, it's hard to disagree with that overall sentiment, but I'm not sure who wouldn't know that. Point 3, lesson planning and workload.
Oh, yeah.
I'd like to be clear, I'm only referring to this online guidance, but claims that the multiple subject teaching of the primary generalist requires much more planning time than the secondary teacher, whereas the subject specialist secondary teacher spends less time planning, but significantly more time marking. It's controversial. It's almost certainly wrong.
I would say almost certainly wrong.
I think sitting on the fence here, but they're sitting rather awkwardly, and it's a fence made of barbed wire. Point 4 on the 6-point list, classroom management and behaviour. Now, I know this is a big one for you. The plot thickens here. Seems to be completely off the fence, and it's explicitly stating that classroom management in primary requires a nurturing approach, whereas behaviour in secondary is more challenging and requires more of an authoritarian approach.
Absolute nonsense.
It's almost as if this was written by someone who's never actually been to a school of any description.
Let alone taught.
No, neither primary or secondary.
I don't think they've had a university education department as sort of academic partners on this piece of...
I would say, I mean, there's no time to do this now, but if you were in your own time, wanted to do a bit of extracurricular work, going to visit its website. Not just look at everything on that website. It is absolutely, it's a gold mine of just you could entertain yourself for hours,
right,
on some of the advice that's.
And I'm sure they provide cracking supply teachers.
Happy ones, certainly.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Right, so point 5 we got up to, hadn't we? Point 5. Pastoral responsibilities and student support. And again, they point to some key differences. So in primary, pastoral care is deeply embedded and very much about emotional and social support, which is, of course, firmly jettisoned when we get to the world of secondary.
Of course.
When academic mentoring and guidance take centre stage, which, to be fair, does reflect my understanding that primary-age children don't do any kind of learning, whilst the more academically focused teenagers that we work with are famously balanced when it comes to emotions. Point 6, career progression and opportunities. Now, this probably would be different, wouldn't it? So some key differences here. In primary, once you've spent your time in the classroom, you might advance to a role such as Senko, deputy head, or even head teacher. Whereas in secondary, my advice is that opportunities are more along the lines of Senko, deputy head, or possibly head teacher. I mean, my interesting take on that was that Senko is viewed as career progression, because I've often found it as something of a career cul-de-sac. It does offer a summary overall, and I'm going to read that verbatim from the website. Some of what I've said for was paraphrasing. So it says, which sector is right for you? Choose primary teaching if you enjoy working with younger children and fostering early learning. You like teaching multiple subjects and being a generalist. You want to develop strong, long-term relationships with a single class. Don't choose primary, though, if you don't like those things. Instead, choose secondary. Choose secondary if you're passionate about a specific subject and want to specialise. Choose secondary if you enjoy working with older students and preparing them for exams and careers. And choose secondary if you can balance authority and mentorship in a more structured environment. They offer some final thoughts as well. Again, their words, not mine. Both primary and secondary teaching offer unique rewards and challenges. The best choice depends on your personality, teaching style, and professional goals.
And what you've qualified in, I would have thought.
I'd say not irrelevant. Whichever path you choose, the impact you make on students will be invaluable. So some inspirational words to finish off.
Oh,
there.
yeah. And we can buy that.
And can I remind you, again, they are the home of happy teachers.
Yeah.
But I'd like some different insights now. I'd like some insights from a man called Ben. Can you improve on Matt's contribution to the differences between primary and secondary?
For a start, look, let's get cracking and lance the boil on workload. It doesn't matter what level you're working in, whether it's early years, primary, secondary, sixth form. Workload is overwhelming. It doesn't matter if you're doing the job properly. It's an all-consuming, well beyond 1,265 hours job.
What I would say categorically is that primary school teachers do more planning than either you or I.
Yes, but that's a different matter.
But I've worked with many secondary colleagues who put in an awful lot of time in preparation, and at the same time, I take issue with the idea that secondary teachers are doing all the marking. Because
well, I'm not seeing too many bags of marking going home from. The other thing you get from a lot of secondary teachers is, I was up all night doing the marking.
Yeah.
No, you weren't. You had a stack of books on your lap. You had a chat with the kids. You made tea. Nothing wrong with any of this, by the way. You sat down to watch some telly. You marked a book. Then you had a packet of peanuts and whatever it was and dealt with the dog. Then you marked another book. And then you stretched it out until 11:30 when you fell asleep on the sofa. That's not marking all night, is it? But anyway, first of all, let's go back to Matt's list. That revelation, that in primary you teach younger children and in secondary you teach older children. I mean, it just needs a few seconds to just let that wisdom sink in, doesn't it? I mean, absolutely, that was fantastic.
I mean, it certainly explains why the people who've been sitting in front of me all these years in the classrooms I've been in haven't been the young children that I thought they should be. I mean, I think I was in the wrong school.
But anyway, this idea, there's an element of truth in point 2 about the generalist versus the specialist. But that's a bit like, sort of damning the primaries with the faint praise of, they do all this sort of generalist stuff. I'm sure, well, I know there are a lot of primary school teachers who are maths specialists or language specialists or phonics specialists or early years specialists or whatever it is. So that is also a specialism. So, yeah, I think you could win an argument either way to say, primary is more difficult, more challenging in lots of ways. So, and I'm not sitting on the fence. It's true. Secondary, yes. If you're teaching an A-level group and they're bright, you have to be much brighter than them.
Yes.
Being one page or one chapter, if you're really lucky, ahead of them in the book ain't going to cut it, is it? But I think, that sort of generalist specialist thing did make me laugh. The workload, load of nonsense. The idea that the sort of behavioural issues sort of filter out into the background, and it's all about academic mentoring. Is that what you said?
That's right. That's what. Not what I said. To be clear, these are not my views. But
what planet are these people operating in? Behaviour management is challenging all the way through school.
I mean, I would say in my defence, but
they don't need to defend.
It's a weak defence. If you go on their website, and you should, as I say, Hours of Entertainment. There's you can meet the team, and there's pictures of the various team, and they little anecdotes about why they've got into what they do. Not one of them's been a teacher, so that's I don't think they wrote the website because I think AI has contributed heavily to the writing of the website. And if there's a video,
oh great,
of somebody sharing what is all about, and it's one of the worst examples I've ever seen of an AI-generated person talking as if they're a real person. And it's like sort of watching a kind of computer-animated movie from the sort of late 90s. It's that kind of calibre.
When have we ever found in our jobs that having an authoritative approach with those students is going to absolutely get us where we need to?
I mean, quite the contrary. What I would say also is in terms of the pastoral side of things and just generally dealing with the emotions of students, there's obviously quite a lot of that happens in secondary, and we've got whole parts of the school that are designed for that. But I would agree that I wouldn't in any way swap places with a primary school teacher in having to deal with that sort of stuff with the younger sector.
But what I would say about primary, which is true, is that the teacher in the primary school is often deity, aren't they? When you're young, I remember looking up to my primary school teachers, Mrs. Barton, Mrs. Smith at Eglwys Newydd Primary School in Whitchurch in Cardiff, seeing them as deity. If they told me the sky was green, neon green, I'm writing it down in my exercise book. If Mrs. Smith had said, "Follow me into this burning building, I've got a sticker book," I'd have gone in. But some teachers in the secondary school, you're asking them, let's call him Brian. If Brian says the sky's blue, the kid at the back saying, "What source are you using for that? Or where did he get that from?" Well, my brother says it's actually a simulation, so who are you to judge? There's a lot of the teachers are different, have different pressures. The kids are different. The age is different. Everything's different. This comparison, it drives me mad in education, whether I was a teacher or a head teacher. There is this general stereotype that a lot of primary school teachers will say, "We've built them up to this standard, and what the hell did you lot do with them when they got into year 7 and 8? They did nothing. Their handwriting's gone to pot."
Yes.
And there's an element of truth that, it's kind of, perhaps there's a bit of a babyish approach from some of us in year 7, but it's just different, isn't it? So the primary school teacher said, we've built them up, they got to this standard, they were achieving level, whatever it was, and this and that and the other. Now, I met him in the street, Tommy, and he's forgotten how to spell his name, and what are you doing with it? There's a little bit of that stereotype around. But then on the secondary school side, it's all this, they've overinflated the grades.
Ah, yes.
What were they doing with them? So I just think if this podcast can do one thing, let's add it to the mission statement, shall we?
We haven't got a mission statement.
No, I know we haven't, but we were thinking.
Let's make a mission statement.
Yeah, let's break down some of these barriers. It's nonsense.
Primary and secondary. I actually, and I think you may have been there. I don't know. We sat through a CPD event recently where the keynote speaker was.
Yes, we did.
We sat through discussing the problems with it was a curriculum-based talk.
Why don't we talk to each other?
Why don't we talk to each other? That was it. And one of the issues being that what primary school teachers are teaching children is absolutely fine. It's good. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the content. And what secondary teachers are teaching is fine, and there's nothing wrong with, but that they don't necessarily tally up particularly well. So what's been taught, history, I think, it was a religious education he was talking about, wasn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
And the topics he was trying to teach at A level hadn't been covered earlier, and it would have been good if those students had a bit more of a grounding. But because he worked in an all-through school, he was also teaching primary, and he himself was not teaching the topics.
That's right, yeah. So he started to call it, it was good, actually.
Why don't we talk to each other? No, it was good and it was inspirational in some ways. Why don't we talk to each other? Why don't we...
But we do say that, and then we don't do it.
Well, it sounded like he wasn't doing it.
And these terrible Year 7 sort of transition events, where we as a secondary student, I think we do miss a trick here, think that if we put a bit of, I don't know what the chemical is, into the Bunsen burner and it turns green, we're going to sort of send the kids, apoplectic with excitement. About science in the secondary school, only to get there to find out there's so much content to get through. There's no time to put the Bunsen burner on.
That's one of the. I mean, this isn't that, but we are talking about sort of education in general, and I'd like to come back to this idea. I'm not a science specialist. I've never been a science specialist. I did do science, separate sciences, GCSE, and I did attempt it at A level, but less said about that the better. But
same here.
Fundamentally, what I've never understood is why all science lessons across the board, without exception, are taught in labs. But very little of what happens in those lessons requires a lab.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. You could be in a bog-standard classroom.
It should be.
Squeaky whiteboard.
Wouldn't it be a better use of... If you're building a new school, I mean, some schools have been around for a long time. Perhaps it wouldn't be...
Have better equipped,
fewer rooms that you have a bookable science room for doing experiments in.
Exactly right.
And most science lessons just... And yet, actually, when you think about primary schools, wouldn't they benefit from a lab? A bookable lab.
Absolutely.
Which very few, I think, have.
Well, I think some have.
Some have now, do they, perhaps?
But anyway, again, this has made me think about the differences again between primary and secondary. I do think something that's genuine, and I'm happy to be challenged on this, is the currency exchange rate for rewards is crazy, the difference. So in primary school, you might do a mediocre drawing of a cat, maybe, and get a gold star. Possibly even, I don't know whether platinum stars are out there or whether they've gone into double platinum. I don't know.
Maybe.
I mean, you've got kids.
Well, no. So I know a little bit about the rewards that we see, the tangible rewards. But we give out postcards in secondary schools for students who've done well.
Yeah. But I'm sort of coming to that. But this, you draw that mediocre drawing of a cat. You might get the platinum star. You feel like you're a sort of Nobel prize winner, don't you? And maybe that's great. That's what you need when you're young, to build your confidence.
Well, no, I was going to say though, the postcards do happen in primary, and they don't just give them out. That's the point I was going to make. They probably do give out stickers.
But in secondary, you're sort of writing. I remember sort of writing a 3,000-word thesis on the socio-economic causes of the French Revolution or something like that, being told I had the equivalent in today's money of it's a strong 6. But if you want the 9, you'd really need to redraft that and start again.
I'd flip it on its head a little bit though and say that we in secondary, we can give out postcards every lesson if we want to.
We could, but we don't.
We don't. You and I don't. We don't even know where the postcards are kept. But some teachers do, right? And that's true. Some teachers give out postcards for what you and I might think in secondary. Might not think merits a postcard, but there's no clear criteria. We generally think if you've done quite well, you can have a postcard. But my daughter gets postcards once if she's had a couple, and they've meant, we've kept them because they've meant quite a lot to her. But they don't. They're sort of once every now and again. But then I go, that parents' evening I alluded to at the top of the show, you might recall, I was told she's achieving good things. So the postcard once a term doesn't necessarily reflect that. But at the same time, I think it's enough. I don't think she needs any more than that. They mean something. She keeps them. Yeah. She likes them. Whereas some of our kids in secondary get given postcards. They must have a bookshelf full of... it's insane. Yeah. They can't have any storage for these postcards. There's so many. But
it's some teachers, and it brings me on to sort of the classroom management stuff. I absolutely refute this idea that primary is all about nurturing and secondary is all about being authoritative. That is just absolute nonsense. However, the style obviously has to be different, doesn't it? So primary teachers, in my experience, you can't brand them all together, this is ridiculous, but in my experience, have that sort of customer service voice, that sort of high-pitched, melodic, slightly terrifying. Now, class, we use our indoor voices, don't we? If we can't be quiet, the reading rug will be sad. Now, you can't say things like that in a secondary school, can you?
No, you can't make reference to a reading rug at all.
No, you can't. You definitely can't. But secondary school teachers have given up on the rug. Obviously, they can't.
I don't think there's a budget for a rug at this juncture.
So they use the stair, don't they? Really, there's a sort of stair that we do. But
not stairs. You don't make
no,
sit on the stairs.
A stair,
like a hard stair, like a Paddington Bear hard stair.
Yeah. A sort of
You hope that works, because if that doesn't work, you've got
standing at the front,
arms folded,
paws. Yeah, arms folded.
I say that because you are folding your arms to give a visual, but this is obviously our listeners.
Silent. Vibrating with a specific type of rage that can only be fueled by low wages and teenage sarcasm. It's that kind of right at the front of the class. It's totally different. You can't. I don't think you can compare one with the other in any way.
Well, I think we've done a fair bit to move forward Matt's initial descriptions of the differences between primary and secondary.
Maybe they could get in touch with us, and
we can support them with their website. Not in anything technical, because I don't understand how they work, but I'd be happy to help them with the wording. On there, and I think it might improve. It might improve things, because if they are genuinely sending out staff to work in schools, in UK schools, that don't already know the difference between primary and secondary to a level where they understand the ages are different, I would worry about the calibre of staff that are going in. But we have, once again, we've filled the time that we were aiming to fill, and it is the end of the lesson. So what's your one take-home from today, Ben?
That if I was thinking of moving into primary education, that I need to realise that those students might be younger.
Yes. I mean, I think what I'd taken away from this is that there's no need to explain the difference between primary and secondary. So largely this was a waste of an episode, but hopefully still entertaining for some people.
Absolutely. And that you never need to be authoritative in a primary school.
You don't need to be.
And you never need to be nurturing in a secondary school.
Absolutely. Those are take-homes we shouldn't be taking home.
Let's bid our listeners adieu.
I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say goodbye.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.